Coming up on We Talk News this week, Massachusetts-based MSO Curaleaf is closing operations in Colorado, Oregon, and California. The Golden State is the nation's #1 cannabis market and now is watching many of their growers leave the state. Is a market price correction imminent? Meanwhile, New York awards another 30 retail licenses as that market opens up, while in Connecticut, Republican Senate leaders are looking to shut down the new adult use market before it even gets started. Now, while Republicans still rule the roost in the Granite State, the GOP in New Hampshire sounds like they are changing their tune about cannabis reform. Speaking of change, the FDA finally releases guidelines for research of cannabis on humans. So, how do you sign up for that one? All that and coast-to-coast cannabis news on We Talk News with Elena Pinto next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elena Pinto, and welcome to this week's We Talk News. In our highest headline this week, could CBD be getting a facelift at the federal level? Well, the FDA has announced it does not intend to make any new guidance on CBD in food supplements, despite 3 citizen petitions asking them to do so. This week, the agency called on the federal government to develop a new framework for the safe use of CBD, saying it would work with Congress to develop that framework through a cross-agency partnership. FDA Principal Deputy Commissioner Janet Woodcock said, quote, "We have not found adequate evidence to determine how much CBD can be consumed and for how long before causing harm." That means, for now, there won't be any new federal rules around CBD in your food or supplements until the government steps in further. By the way, we're still waiting on that rescheduling of cannabis the president called for. But meanwhile, there's big breaking news in the business world of weed this week as multi-state operator Curaleaf announces it will close down operations in 3 major legal markets. The company is based in Massachusetts, where it will continue to operate, but the rest of its future remains to be seen. Last month, Bloomberg reported that Curaleaf received hundreds of millions of dollars in financing from Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich in its early years. And there's been speculation about the company's executive chairman, Boris Jordan, and his alleged ties to business in Russia. But Curaleaf has different reasons for closing its doors in California, Oregon, and Colorado. And Deborah Borchardt has the full breakdown in our Green Market Report.
I'm Deborah Borchardt, and this is the business update for We Talk News from the Green Market Report. Curaleaf Holdings is finally exiting a trio of legacy Western states in search for better profits. The exodus will begin this month with the proactive closure of the majority of its operations, including its production and cultivation facilities in California, Colorado, and Oregon. The company cited the lack of enforcement over the illicit market and price compression as to why it was tapping out of the West Coast. The company is also laying off 10% of its workforce. They said that they expect these moves to save $60 million. New York-based Ascend Wellness announced its expansion into Maryland with its $19 million purchase of Devi Holdings, which runs 4 operational medical marijuana dispensaries. Now, the move marks the 7th state in which Ascend Wellness has a footprint. The company already has cannabis stores in Illinois, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And finally, Canadian producer Avant Brands painted a rosy outlook for 2023 in its latest corporate update. The company said they expect meaningful cash flows over the course of 2023 from its acquisition of its remaining 50% stake in 3PL Ventures, and they also expect an increase in production by 60%. And that's it for this week. Next week, we'll be watching for earnings from High Tide, Scotts Miracle-Gro, and MedMen. I'm Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report.
As such, a largely successful company ceasing operations in 3 states is sure to have an impact on Curaleaf stakeholders. And Doug Miller of High on Wall Street takes a closer look at that and other headlines that could impact your wallet.
Hey everybody, I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. MariMed, stock ticker MRMD. They just boosted their debt by $35 million with secured credit facility. The CEO states that they could have funded their entire plan themselves, but it was the right time to raise the capital and accelerate these plans. What they're going to use the capital for is a new cultivation and processing facility in Illinois, a new processing kitchen in Missouri, expanding existing facilities, and other business-related items. It closed at 39 cents today. This chart is curling up. It's looking good. I'm keeping my eye on it, and I will be watching it. And now let's move on to Curaleaf, stock ticker CURLF. They dropped huge news today. Deborah Borchardt with the Green Market Report, she'll be breaking down all the details. I just want to discuss the stock chart real quick. It took a huge dip. It hit the bottom. I'm expecting it to bounce off the bottom, but I'm going to keep my eye on it for it to pull back a little bit more. Keep your eye on it. It's going to be a great opportunity. It's going to bounce off that bottom. Huge news. Again, Deborah Borchardt will break that all down in the Green Market Report. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
The people of Oregon will likely be impacted as one of Curaleaf's biggest brands lives there. And that's where we find Alibi Cannabis's Marianne Kersagi with the details on another popular company that's facing legal trouble.
I'm Marianne from Alibi Cannabis with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Today, Curaleaf announced the closure of operations in California, Colorado, and Oregon. Curaleaf has a large presence here in Oregon through its Select brand, which has been plagued with product recalls and more scandals. Oregon-based Dutchie is in another lawsuit. This time, they are suing Akerna over access to leaf data systems, which is used for seed-to-sale tracking in Pennsylvania. The lawsuit alleges that Akerna does not allow retailers to use any other point-of-sale system. And finally, on a sad note, Oregon OG Geek Farms is closing operations. They have built an amazing reputation for growing fantastic cannabis and being a great member of the community. Best wishes for their next journey. That'll do it for the Oregon Report this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
The growing pains of the cannabis industry aren't just being felt in the US. It's happening globally as well. One country overseas is seeing a big cut to the job market, while one of the biggest airports in the world says it's ready to crack down on weed. Lex Pelger has the details from Europe.
I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creations with this week's European Cannabis Report from Weed Talk News. This week, 2 business stories and 2 prohibition stories. We begin with bad news for Portugal. At the Portugal facility of the Canadian cannabis giant Tilray, they will be cutting 25% of their workforce at their medical cannabis operation. Then, the Colombian cannabis company Clever Leaves will cut 21% of their employees at their Portugal facility. We've seen the slashing of jobs across North American cannabis companies, and so it's no surprise to see the cutbacks hitting the EU. In news from the war on drugs, an Albanian official was caught at the Macedonian border with 58 kilos of cannabis. Only 28 years old, but head of IT for the State Information Agency, she had used her government ID to get through checkpoints. With Albania trying to join the EU, but being labeled a narco state by some Western governments, how they deal with this situation will be closely watched. In the UK, similar news. After 11 different people have been charged with smuggling cannabis in just the last 2 weeks, Heathrow Airport said they will be stepping up their surveillance. The temptation for smugglers is high because California cannabis brings a premium on the London market. That's the European Cannabis Report for this week. For more on the science side, see my newsletter on Substack, Cannabinoids and the People. I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creations reporting for Weed Talk News.
Cannabis consumers and patients are no stranger to product recalls and changes to what they find on their shelves. Well, for those in Canada, there could be changes to some of the ingestible products you're used to seeing, as companies are being called out for their labeling. Debbie Facey has the details in our Canada report.
Hi, this is Debbie Facey from Weed Talk News, your Canadian correspondent, with your Canadian Toques of the Week. This week in Canada, what we have going on, which isn't too much, but is a one large enough realization, is the edibles concept. So what we had going on when it came to our rollout was a cannabis 1.0, 2.0, and then it would be 3. But in this case, the 2.0 allowed most of the concentrates in. What that also had was the beverages and the edibles. When that came into play, some of the companies actually decided to not use cannabis as their main ingredient when it came to their edibles, but to use some sort of a concentrate. With that being used, that had not only upped the amount of THC percentage in the edible overall, but it has also made the edible a lot higher of a consumption rate compared to one that would be made with just cannabis. That being said, with the Health Canada wanting to readjust and realign the now noticeable extract being used in edibles, they're facing a fight when it comes to the illicit market becoming the main source for many of the cannabis consumers when it comes to now obtaining these products that were made with concentrates. That being said, Health Canada does have something to look at and to readjust and realign, but has to also take in mind what has also been in place for the last 2.5 to 3 years. The last and only other thing that is going on, unfortunately, in Canada as of right now, is the collide, or I should say, the hybrid of the Organic Dutchman, which is a Mississauga company in Ontario, Canada, and the Bazam company in BC, Vancouver. They have decided to come together, and that has led to the Green Organic Dutchman changing their name. For most consumers in Canada, we do know the Green Organic Dutchman as the beautiful green glass. With that, they haven't stated anything about their product changing, as in their packaging, but they have stated that they are going to be adapting the Bazam's name and be changing the name to align with both of the companies coming together. This is Debbie Facey with We Talk News, your Canadian correspondent.
Back in the US, more shops are coming to the Empire State. The New York Cannabis Control Board has approved 30 new retail licenses, bringing the total number statewide to 66. And regulators say more are on the way. Board member Ruben McDaniel says customers can expect to see several soft openings of these new locations over the next month and a half. But in Connecticut, it seems Republican lawmakers are trying to stop that new market in its tracks. This week, House Republicans introduced a bill with several proposals to make changes to the state's adult use market that just went into effect this month. The proposals include items like prohibiting sales of edible cannabis products, suspending retail sales until the state's drug recognition expert certification program is operational, even putting a THC cap on products. But since Democrats hold the House majority in Connecticut, it's not likely to pass. But this is why it's important to know who is running your government at the state level and where they stand on weed. Sticking with the East Coast, let's travel to Vermont for an update from our own Jessie Lynn Dolan.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. In the second month of retail adult use sales, Vermont November sales topped $3.8 million. Vermont Cannabis Control Board continues their peer networking series on February 2nd with a session on tax compliance with the Vermont Department of Taxes. The Cannabis Control Board meets on Monday, January 30th for their monthly meeting, including much anticipated license approvals, as this is the first month the board is meeting monthly rather than weekly for those meetings and approvals. On January 26th, Vermont Growers Association Grassroots Advocates held a virtual community meeting with a read-through of the proposed 2023 changes to Cannabis Control Board rules as we look towards several cannabis bills coming into legislative session in the coming weeks. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrols.com.
Next door in New Hampshire, efforts for an adult use market may not be lost. A new bill to legalize recreational cannabis for adults in New Hampshire is being backed by the ACLU of New Hampshire and a conservative group called Americans for Prosperity. It would also let people grow at home. New Hampshire remains the only state in New England without an adult use of cannabis market. Tim Egan, no longer a member of the House of Representatives there, sees a change in attitude by Republicans on cannabis. Egan is now the chairman of the Cannabis Advisory Board for New Hampshire and shared his thoughts on these renewed efforts.
When you talked about Republican nationally, I think you're seeing more and more of sort of the libertarian mindset of Republicans, those who are very sort of small government. And one of the things that in their mindset is I should be able to grow and consume cannabis if I want to. It's a sort of a libertarian mindset. So that's where I think you're seeing nationally Republicans being more pro-cannabis, where it used to be more of the hippie liberal Democrats.
Yeah. And it's nice to actually see them actually agree on something. And if it happens to be this plant medicine, I'm encouraged by that. That being said, how encouraged are you about getting some pro-cannabis legislation in New Hampshire passed?
I couldn't be more excited right now. As the chair of the House Cannabis Caucus the last 3 years, it was sort of a tough battle, but it's been refreshing. The piece of legislation that I had been working on, and if reelected, it would have filed, I'm happy to say that was filed by our majority leader, Jason Osborne, our minority leader, Matt Wilhelm. So we have bipartisan support of this bill, House Bill 639. Also, what is very rare is when House bills are filed to have co-sponsors be senators. We actually have 3 senators on it as co-sponsors as well. They testified just yesterday at the House when the bill was introduced to the Department of Commerce. That's another part that makes us really excited, is that it was actually put in front of commerce. Usually cannabis bills are put in front of public safety, and it's a lot about what is this going to mean for our kids and DUI and all those topics. Well, all those are equally important issues, but commerce is going to look at it as an economic development play, as a job creation play, as a scientific research play, looking at the cannabinoid plant and saying, what else can we do with it besides it being something that you can enjoy like alcohol, or you could use medicinally if you are really a serious patient. But how else can we leverage this cannabinoid plant? So these kind of combination of factors are very exciting.
In neighboring Massachusetts, changes could be coming as well, but only if you are a worker or employer. We Talk News producer Tori Chamberlain has this week's Bay State Report.
Hey guys, I'm Tori Chamberlain, and this is your Bay State Report. Massachusetts lawmakers recently filed a slew of cannabis-related measures to build on the already successful and huge market here. Dan Adams of the Boston Globe did a great job of summarizing what some of these measures would entail. They span from banning the firing of employees over failed THC tests, making it easier to expunge cannabis-related criminal charges, and the aptly named Act to Facilitate Labor Peace Among the Cannabis Workforce, which would require licensed cannabis facilities to allow workers to vote on unionizing. This is big news considering how many major companies that operate here in Massachusetts have had lawsuits filed against them, whether here or in other states, related to worker unionization. And these other measures would, of course, help all other consumers and patients here in Massachusetts. So I'll be keeping an eye out on what passes in the state legislature and what doesn't. That does it for the Bay State Report. I'm Tori Chamberlain.
Traveling to New Jersey now, where the Garden State may really be living up to its name. There are reports legislation regarding a person's ability to grow cannabis for personal use will finally be addressed, well after an adult use market has been established. So here's Jill Goldsberry with the details.
Good day, everyone. I'm Jill Goldsberry, and this is what's happening in New Jersey cannabis. A lot of news to pack in, so we'll just jump right in. According to the CRC, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission of New Jersey is set to be the home of new consumption lounges starting as early as this year. But wait, don't get too excited, because there will be rules and restrictions. After all, it's New Jersey. What would it be without rules and restrictions, right? First of all, lounges must be attached to a retail licensed dispensary. Therefore, one cannot open a standalone cannabis lounge without having a cannabis retail license. In addition, both the township, which the dispensary and the proposed lounge is to be located, and the Cannabis Regulatory Commission must approve the application for the cannabis lounge. That being said, lounges would operate similar to the way a brewery operates, where the lounge cannot sell food or drinks on site, but patrons can bring or order outside food or drinks, excluding alcoholic beverages, of course, and tobacco. You can also bring your own THC products to consume, and consumers from out of state are also able to bring their own THC products. And that, my friend, is where it will get a little complicated. So we will keep you posted on what's going on with consumption lounges in New Jersey and keep you updated. And now shifting gears to another legal issue in New Jersey. Can New Jersey residences grow their own private stash of marijuana? Currently, no. But pretty soon, this may be a possibility. What we're seeing this year is a proposed revamp of this situation. This year, the Senate Bill number 3438 was proposed to increase the THC cap. Currently, as a refresh, the state allows no more than 30% of cannabis flower and 60% of concentration or solid liquid concentrate sold under the state. So possession of up to 6 ounces of cannabis is legal for adult use possession, and there are presently no caps on potency of THC in New Jersey. And what we're currently seeing is there is a proposed cap. The state has several bills under review, including bill number S353, which was introduced back in November 2022 by Senator Bin Gopal of Ocean Township. And this bill, number S353, is proposing legalizing the growth and possession of up to 6 marijuana plants for personal or recreational use, and up to 10 plants for personal or medical use by a person 21 years of age or older. So that is what's being proposed. If this does go through, we will be able to grow our own personal stash in New Jersey. We'll keep you posted on this. I'm Jill Goldsberry with We Talk News. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Meanwhile, numbers are up in Michigan, not in price, but in sales. Michigan Normal Executive Director Rick Thompson continues our coast-to-coast roundup.
Hello again, everyone. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Medical cannabis sales rose a startling 9% in December to set a new single-month sales record of $221 million. Medical sales were down 1.1%, and adult use sales were up 9.7% over November 2022. Although medical marijuana sales seem to have plateaued at the $13 to $16 million level during the last few months, Detroit's new adult use program is just now coming online, and many millions of dollars will eventually be recorded as recreational sales instead of medical. The price of cannabis continues to fall like the roach out of a car window, as the average per pound price dropped 4.7% to about $14.51. Now, if you know, you know, but there's 16 ounces in a pound, and that makes the average per ounce price in Michigan about $90. Now, this consumer's paradise is a retailer's nightmare. A $1 million deal to develop a property in Saline has been canceled by Loom. The company had received all the go-aheads needed to finish the project, but then backed out. The original concept was a new dispo building and developing other usable space on the property, and it's that additional space which has Loom nixing the deal, a company spokesperson says, as doing that planned development would be much more difficult and expensive than original projections had imagined. Now, this is a project they wanted badly, too. It has a coveted Michigan Avenue address, and they way overbid the asking price. Property was originally listed for $817,000, and Loom threw a straight mill at him, which is about $182,000 more than the asking price. Now, guess who gets screwed the worst in this deal? That's the property owner. See, Saline has a lot of new dispos coming online, and because of the buffer zones, this property is no longer eligible for a cannabis retail business, according to MLive. So long, $800,000 property value. Also in the epic fail category is Skymint, the state's most hated brand name, who is in default on payments to their real estate investment trust overlords, Innovative Industrial Properties. The default concerns an under construction site intended for a major cultivation facility. The Urinal Mint brand is in compliance with all their other properties and payments, according to the IIPR quarterly statement, which might indicate they're finally going to stop constructing new grow houses in Michigan. The market's saturated, dudes. Get a clue. Hey, heads up, cannabis business people. Here's a few names to listen for and to be cautious of. Christopher Woods, Renaissance Solutions, and Terrapin. In 2020, Woods raised $9 million from Colorado investors to start a retail store, processing facility, and cultivation center in Grand Rapids under the Terrapin name. Woods is the majority owner of Terrapin. In January 2022, when it looked like the business was not going to be successful, Terrapin started taking profits out of the company, milking it for all it was worth, which directly benefited Woods more than anyone. Terrapins began overpaying the Renaissance Solutions management team by $1 million a year, and guess who owns that one? Yep, Woods again. By September 2022, the game was up, and Terrapin was shutting down operations. And all those upfront investors who ponied up the cash to get started, they got screwed. Well, when it comes to screwing, the giver can also be the receiver. And Woods himself is going to take it hard because the bilked investors filed a lawsuit in Colorado alleging breach of contract and civil theft by Woods. Now, the paper trail's pretty convincing. We'll bring you more on this lawsuit as it progresses over the coming year, but you can expect to hear about other investor-initiated lawsuits over failed cannabis businesses in Michigan. Now for some reporting on a different type of crime. Last week, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency issued a warning about thefts for cannabis retailers who use delivery drivers. In at least 13 different incidents, cannabis delivery people pulled up to a residential home to make a drop-off and were ambushed by thieves with guns. Now they take the cannabis, the money, and sometimes even the delivery person's car. Those 13 incidents took place during just a 6-week period from December into January. Although the CRA hasn't offered any tips or advice on how to avoid having your delivery drivers beaten and robbed, the bulletin issued by the agency does remind license holders that they have 24 hours in which to report those incidents to the state regulatory agency. I guess that's the best they can do. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
Efforts for equity in the Show Me State are starting to show up. BioLastal is now the only Black-owned shop serving medical patients in downtown St. Louis. So let's check in with Brandon Jones for more happening in Missouri this week.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones from B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And that's right, Viola finally opened their first location here in downtown St. Louis for our first minority-owned dispensary here in the state. Very happy to see it. There are a couple manufacturing licenses. One is Missouri Wellness. That also is a minority veteran-owned company here in the state as well. One of the big cases that actually happened this week was the first expungement case happened. Adam was actually released. He was sentenced to 5 years for a little over an ounce of cannabis. He was 3 years into his sentence and got released just this week. They had a nice food drive and clothing drive. I actually dropped off some stuff for myself over at Kansas City Cannabis here in Kansas City. So if you have any extra clothing, he is the size large and would use anything that help him get back on his feet. Like I said, he went in when he was only 18 years old, did 3 years for less than 2 ounces of cannabis. So we are only, a couple weeks away from February 6th when adult sales for recreation are going to happen here in Missouri too. So things are really starting to get crazy. A lot of events are getting ready to happen. So it's a great time to be here in Kansas City, seeing the cannabis world take over here. It's really fun. So anybody, stay educated, stay medicated. Brandon Jones from Big Green Distribution. Have a great week.
Let's travel next door to Illinois now for an update from Thomas Howard.
In Illinois this week, lots of things happened. So the lottery that they're going to have for dispensaries anywhere in the United States, that has been extended to March 3rd. So now you have an extra 2 weeks to play the lottery if you're eligible. For more on that, you can go check out Cannabis Legalization News. We did a bit on it, and then Miggy and I are going to be actually applying because he's eligible and I live in Illinois. After that, the big news that came out just within the hour today, the deadline that was pending for 39 non-operative craft growers to be operational by practically next month, March of 2023, has been elongated to February of 2024, meaning that the prices of these craft grower licenses will be going up until perhaps more licenses are released later this year after perhaps a settlement or some resolution of the craft grower super case that is currently pending in Cook County. That's really all the news we have in the state of Illinois this week. Please join us on Sundays for Cannabis Legalization News with me and then my co-host Miggy. Back to you, Elena.
And finally, we started the episode with the FDA. Why not end with them? While the agency may not be willing to make a move on CBD just yet, it is issuing some other new guidance about clinical cannabis research on humans. The new guidance outlines how researchers can conduct clinical trials for certain substances containing cannabis or cannabis-derived compounds without breaking federal law. This move really solidifies what was written into the 2018 Farm Act, that low cannabis concentration hemp is no longer considered cannabis, meaning it's no longer an illegal Schedule I substance and can be used for research. And for that THC-rich cannabis that people want to research, you used to only be able to get this grown at the University of Mississippi. But this new guidance allows for the use of other sources authorized by the DEA to provide Schedule I cannabis materials for research. This is big news for the future of cannabis. But while we wait for the feds to slash that Schedule I status altogether, it's nice to see we're at least opening more doors for researchers to learn about this plant. If we find out how to sign up as a volunteer, we will let you know. After all, it's a whole new world of weed out there, right? But remember to use it wisely. That's it for this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Now let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. Now, The guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. So here's how it works. You start with that glass bowl, you flame on, and then you inhale nice and smooth so the smoke goes through 3 different filtration and cooling systems. Now, if pre-rolls is your thing, you can use the Weegits filter that a pre-roll fits into perfectly. That's right, or even a chillum. The more filters, the smoother the draw. Best of all is the price. You can get all this, or one or the other, for just a few bucks. It'll cool your smoke and you'll give your lungs a break. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
Which at first I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm an activist, but I have, held a bullhorn on the State House steps. I have frequently testified before the Cannabis Control Commission in the state legislature, and I'm not, shy about criticizing where I see, mistakes being made. So yeah, I think that's what differentiates me, just an appreciation for the plant. And then also I'm a cannabis entrepreneur myself. I've started businesses, so I've lived that entrepreneurial journey. I know how hard it is. It is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint. So I think that, I'm in the game, not just on the sidelines.
As a broker, we have access to many, many cannabis carriers. So I will go in with 2 or 3 quotes for people. The quotes might be $20,000 for one, $22,000 for another, $17,500 for another. Pretty close among the 3. What I tell people is it's not the pricing, it's what's included and not included, meaning exclusions. An exclusion in layman's terms is just something that's not included. It's not on the menu, so it's just not included. But if you don't know that, if no one shows you that on page 71 of a 150-page policy, you're not going to know. No one knows. I never met one person that says they read an insurance policy. If you do, I got some property in Florida for you.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
So the reality of the matter is, big banks and small banks are going to be different in a lot of ways. And they're both going to have their advantages and disadvantages. For a business like cannabis, you really have to have an integral knowledge of that business and a real granular knowledge of that business and the players involved in it. And that's why if you look at the banks that are successful to play in this space in Massachusetts, they are smaller banks that are very heavy, intensified personal touch, human communication, where you don't get a lot of that with the bigger banks.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.